What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is the show where we tackle the NFL. Well, wildcard round is in the books. We look ahead to the divisional round with the matchups coming up there for see who will go to the conference championship and then who will move on to the Super Bowl this year. I'm recording this ahead of time since I will be on vacation in Mexico for the next week. So this will be a smaller, shorter episode, but we'll still cover all the hot topics from Wildcard Weekend. Before we get into all that, though, a couple reminders. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com. So that's the End Zone Report. You can also listen to the show on Spotify, and now you can watch it on Spotify as well, if that is your preferred platform. So you can watch it on YouTube and Spotify as of today. So a lot of options there to watch the episode. You can also follow the show on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram. I post all the artwork from the episodes as well as breaking news from the NFL, like the winners of the wildcard round and who's moving on. I have my bracket on there for you guys to look at that as well as all the game picks that I do and all the betting that I do as well. So go ahead and check that out. Follow, subscribe to the show. It helps out a lot, and I appreciate everybody who has supported the show this first year. It's been a lot of fun diving into the NFL for the first time on the podcast. So looking forward to finishing off the year strong, heading into the Super Bowl 60, and then into the off-season craziness, and then head over to the 2026 season later in August. So lots to look ahead to. With that, let's see what's up with the NFL after a wild card round week. Couple of injuries to touch upon, and then we do have some coaching updates as well. Injuries, Josh Allen just got an absolute beating this past weekend against the Jaguars, so he's feeling some pain, but he should be good to go against Denver on Saturday. Gabe Davis left the game early as well against the Jaguars with a knee injury. We'll see what the update is on him as the week progresses with his practice and all that. But the biggest one probably coming out of the week was George Kittle, tight end of the San Francisco 49ers. He tore his Achilles and will be out for the remainder of the playoffs and partially into the 2026 season, it looks like. This is a huge bummer for the Niners as they're making this push to the Super Bowl. It looks like Tongas, the backup, will take all the snaps, just like he did against Philly this last week. So our hearts and prayers go out to George Kittle. We'll see how his rehab goes and if he does consider retirement. I know those are the rumors that have been circulating around now with his age and with his constant injuries every year. It could be time to hang up the cleats, but we will obviously update you on any news around George Kittle. Coaching news, the Baltimore Ravens haven't missed a beat. They're really pushing hard to replace John Harbaugh as the head coach there in Baltimore. They've already completed 3 interviews and have a long list of requested interviews as well. They've completed interviews with Vance Joseph, the Denver defensive coordinator, David Webb, the Denver quarterback coach, and then Clint Kubiak, who is the Seattle offensive coordinator. So obviously teams that were on a bye this week, they were able to get those schedules in. As teams get knocked out and eliminated through playoffs, you'll see those OCs, DCs, and possibly even a head coach moving over to the next step if they deem worthy enough. But it's really been, defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, and now apparently QB coaches who are getting in the mix of this entire coaching carousel with like 7 or 8 teams looking to replace their head coach or even an OC. So lots more to come with the quarterback coaches, DCs, and OCs as they look for that next step up in the NFL in this coach carousel. So we'll update you as soon as we get that. But that kind of wraps up the news and injuries for this past week. Not too crazy, but I wanted to at least touch up on those because the George Kittle one was a huge one. And then the Baltimore Ravens seem to be full steam ahead on getting their head coach picked out sooner than later. So we'll update you on that as well. So let's get over to the wild card storylines from the week. So for the storylines and playoffs, these will be the winners moving on to the next round in playoffs. So first up, we've got the Rams and the Panthers. The Rams were able to hold off the Panthers 34-31. This was a tight race. This was a lot tighter than I think a lot of people were anticipating. They were probably expecting Stafford to just completely annihilate this Panthers team with Devontae Adams back and with the way their defense has been playing. But Bryce Young and the Panthers said otherwise, and they made a push there. There was a couple opportunities there where the Panthers could have came out with a win here and had a massive upset on the Rams, but Sean McVay and the Rams were able to hold off the Panthers, so they will move on to Chicago in this next divisional round. Speaking of Chicago, we had the Packers and Bears go against each other, and the Bears come back and win it in an epic style, 31-27. They were down at the half. It was like 21-3 at halftime, and something just kind of clicked with Caleb Williams and that offense, and they were able to come back, only allowing the Packers to score one more touchdown in the end, but they were able to come back from a 21-3 deficit at halftime to win this 31-27. It was an epic comeback, especially that fourth quarter. I mean, Caleb Williams was putting on his best Josh Allen impression and just taking the team into his hands and just going Superman mode to win this game. So they will move on to face the Rams this week. Over in the AFC, we had the Bills go up against the Jaguars. The Jaguars have been a really, really hot team. The Bills have been kind of up and down throughout the year, but the Bills were able to stop the Jaguars 27-24. Huge bummer on my bracket. I had the Jaguars moving past the Bills, so that part of my bracket is now busted, and you'll see that on social media when I post my bracket with all the wins that I got correct, but also that one loss. But it's good to see that Josh Allen is getting his chance at a Super Bowl ring. This would be the best chance for him with no Mahomes, no Lamar, no Joe Burrow. So this is the time for him to get this ring, and it seems to be his mission right now as he takes this team into his hands and just full steam ahead in Superman mode. He got beat the crap out of it, just like I mentioned in the news segment just a little bit ago. He just took a pounding from that Jaguars defense, but he pushed forward and was able to come out of that win 27-24. The Jaguars had all the chances in the world to win this game, but they couldn't quite get it to click on offense to pull the trigger on some of those field goals that ended up being touchdowns. So we'll monitor the Jaguars in the offseason to see how they recoup from this loss, but it was a great run for the Liam Cohen's first year with the Jaguars as he completely turned that team around. But we'll look to the Bills. They play the Denver Broncos on Saturday, so that would be a very exciting game. The 49ers took on the Eagles, and the Niners were able to take out Philly in Philly, which was an incredible thing to do on their part. They won the game 23-19. There's a lot of things going wrong with Philly right now. A.J. Brown seemed visibly upset on the sideline. Him and Sirianni got into a pretty heated discussion on the sideline in front of everybody. So we'll see if A.J. Brown decides to call it quits with Philly or if they are able to reconcile those differences. But the Niners were able to hold them back. It sucks that they lost George Kittle. That's a huge piece on their offense. But their defense was able to hold Philly to 19 points. And we'll look ahead to Tongas, a tight end position. Hopefully they get Ricky Pearsall back at some point because that would be another great weapon for Brock Purdy to use. But otherwise, he's got Juwan Jennings. I mean, Demarcus Robinson was pretty good this week with a 60-yard bomb that he caught. Christian McCaffrey took the offense by storm with his 2 touchdowns, both through the air. So they have the weapons that they need to win, make a run here through the playoffs. But having Ricky Pearsall back would be great, especially with the George Kittle injury happening in this game. But congrats to all the Niners fans out there. Looks like they are going to make a push through the playoffs, even with their banged-up team. The Chargers took on the Patriots on Sunday night, and the Pats power down the Chargers 16-3. This was a very slow-moving game. The Chargers just couldn't get anything done on offense. Their defense did hold up. The Patriots weren't really scoring as much as they had been in past weeks with Drake May, having 4 or 5 touchdowns in a game. They were able to hold the Patriots down to 16 points, which is a really, really good effort. It's just they couldn't get nothing done on offense. Justin Herbert was getting banged up. He just wasn't clicking with McConkey or Quentin Johnston or even Keenan Allen. Amari Hampton and Vidal were kind of shut down on the ground, even though Vidal looked more efficient than Hampton did, of course. But so the Chargers are just kind of waiting for that 1 year where everything clicks and they're able to move past this wild card round. Justin Herbert, if you not see the stat already, is now 0-3 in the playoffs, which is a very, very shocking stat and very worrisome stat for their supposed franchise quarterback in LA. So we'll monitor how the Chargers bounce back from this in the offseason. But the Pats will go on to play the Texans, who we'll talk about next after their really crazy win on the Steelers last night on Monday night. So the Pats will move on, and we're excited to see what Drake May can do through his first playoff push here as a Patriots quarterback. And then lastly, we had the Texans and Steelers who battled each other last night on Monday night. It was a pretty slog fest, but the Texans were able to eliminate Rodgers and the Steelers. It was a gruesome defensive battle. I mean, it was 7-6 for a lot of this game. And then once they get that fumble recovery on defense for a touchdown, it just kind of clicked, and Stroud was able to take that momentum from the defense and bring it into the offense and score 30-6 as the final score. But bravo to Stroud on taking down this really strong and surprising Steelers team. You know, Rodgers just looked very uncomfortable, which is courtesy of that really dominant Houston defense that DeMeco Ryans was able to put together this year. And then Stroud was clicking with his guys towards the end of the game, but they do have a lot to work on. They need to get more chemistry going with the wide receivers. I mean, it was a Christian Kirk type of game. Nico Collins was pretty much shut down the whole game. So it was the Kirk show with like 100, and I think he ended up with like 110, 120 yards. So bravo to him for kind of reviving himself after a pretty disappointing year as a veteran wide receiver on this team. But we'll see the Texans, what they do against the Patriots this next weekend in the divisional round, and we'll monitor the Steelers, of course, to see what happens with Rodgers. Do they re-sign him? Does Tomlin retire after this loss in the first round again? So lots to look at for the Steelers in the offseason. It's going to be a crazy one for sure. So those are your 6 storylines coming out of the wild card round. Next week, we'll do the storylines again with whoever moves on from the divisional into the conference championship. But next, let's head over to the fantasy corner and go over the top 5 tight ends of this year's fantasy. Just because fantasy season is over, that doesn't mean there's not anything to talk about. So each week in the playoffs, we're going to go through the top 5 of that position, starting with the tight ends this week. So your top 5 tight ends on the 2025 fantasy season. At number 5, we've got Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. His total fantasy points for the year was 187.1 fantasy points. So solid work there, even with him dealing with injuries throughout the year. Number 4, we got the rookie for the Colts, Tyler Warren, who just slightly beat Jake Ferguson there. He had 187.5 fantasy points on the year. So a solid rookie season for him. Of course, they ended up losing Daniel Jones partially through the season. So that definitely impacted his production. So we'll monitor that in the offseason. And number 3, old man Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs ended up here at number 3 with 192.2 fantasy points, which is pretty impressive. We'll monitor him, of course, to see if he does end up retiring. He has kind of hinted at it with the Chiefs now being eliminated from playoffs and just kind of the up and down season that they had this year. It could be time for him to hang up his cleats, but that's a solid performance on the year as the tight end 3. Number 2, very surprising, but very exciting as well if you have him on your dynasty team. Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons coming in at number 2. 210.8 fantasy points on the year. Of course, it helps when you have a 45-point week there towards the fantasy playoffs, but very productive year with Kirk Cousins. We'll see how he continues this momentum next year. It could be Kirk Cousins for the first part of the year, or they could be ditching Kirk Cousins and going back to Michael Penix. But I think this is very promising for Kyle Pitts and all the Kyle Pitts truthers out there who wanted a season like this to kind of show that they didn't blow it on picking him in Dynasty. So bravo to Kyle Pitts. And then at number 1, by a massive lead, we've got Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals with 315.9 fantasy points. This is obviously courtesy of Jacoby Brissett, who was just slinging the ball most of the year. Kyler Murray was very unproductive. The touchdowns eventually came to with Jacoby Brissett, so we'll monitor the Kyler Murray situation in Arizona. They could sign Jacoby to a 2-year deal and kick Kyler to the curb so that they can keep getting production like this. But bravo to Trey McBride as being the number 1 tight end in fantasy this year. So, and quite a bit of a league there, like over 100 points difference between him and number 2 spot with Kyle Pitts. So those are your top 5 tight ends on the year. I'll post this on social media so you can take a look at that as well. So let's head over to the weekly preview and check up on my bracket and then look at the divisional round picks. So I almost had a perfect bracket, but the Jaguars just couldn't get it done. So my NFC side is still perfect. I still got all those picks correct. So we'll look at the Seattle going up against the Niners and the Rams going up against Chicago. But I did get those 3 right, the Rams, the Niners, and the Bears. Over on the AFC side, not as lucky. I did get the Texans right. I did get the Patriots right. But like I said, the Jaguars just couldn't get the job done. The Bills ended up moving on to the divisional round to face Denver, and then the Patriots will face Houston. So my bracket on the AFC side is pretty busted, but the NFC, I'm still looking alive. I do have the Rams going to the Super Bowl and the Denver Broncos going to the Super Bowl on the AFC side. So we'll see if I can get some kind of salvage out of this, but the NFC side is looking pretty strong so far. I'll post that bracket online as well so you can kind of look at that as well. So let's head over to the divisional round and pick these games. Looks like they do have the schedule up finally. So on Saturday, we've got the Bills going up against the Broncos at the 4:30 Eastern time slot. The over-under for that game is 46.5. Looks like the Broncos are favored by 1.5, probably because they are at Mile High and with that defense. I'm going with the Broncos, of course. I mean, this game will be on my birthday. So I'm super excited to watch the Broncos on my birthday play Josh Allen, who my mom is a huge Buffalo Bills fan. So this will be a crazy one to watch with her and I yelling at each other or going up against each other. So, but this will be a fun game. I'm super excited to see Bo Nix and Josh Allen face off. Saturday night, we've got the 49ers taking on the number 1 seed Seattle Seahawks, 8 o'clock Eastern. The over-under of that game is 45.5. The Seahawks are favored by 7.5. I mean, it's tough going into Seattle. The defense has been really solid. Sam Darnold has been playing great. Niners, of course, have been banged up on defense all year. George Kittle has now been ruled out with that torn Achilles. So that's one weapon that Brock Purdy will not be able to utilize. But Tongas has been a solid backup for George Kittle. I am, of course, taking Seattle Seahawks to win this game to move on to the conference championship. This is going to be a tough one for the Niners, though. It's tough going into Seattle, especially with that defense. They've really, really turned this team around since last year, so bravo on them. Sunday, we've got the Houston Texans taking on the New England Patriots, 3 o'clock Eastern time. The over-under for that game is 40.5. The Patriots are favored by 3. I'm going with the Patriots. I know the Houston Texans defense has been solid, but I trust Vrabel and the Drake May-led offense more than Stroud. So, but this is going to be an interesting game. New England Patriots defense has been pretty solid too. You saw how they held the Chargers to only 3 points last week. So this is going to be a fun one. But I am picking the Patriots to move on with Drake May. And then finally, but not least, we've got the Los Angeles Rams headed to Chicago to take on the Caleb Williams and the Bears. They are at 6:30 Eastern time. The over-under is 50.5. The Rams are favored by 3.5. I'm taking the Rams here. I think the Rams are going to tear the Chicago defense apart. Even with it being Chicago, I trust in Stafford and the McVay system. So, I mean, 50.5, that's the highest over-under. That's a massive, massive total. So there's going to be a lot of touchdowns, I hope, with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams. But it should be still a fun game with the way the Chicago Bears have been playing at the helm with Ben Johnson at head coach. So a lot of fun games this weekend, but I am going with the Rams there to finish it off. We don't have a bet this week, but we're going to head over to Show Me the Money anyways because I did win a bet, and we'll go run through that real quick before we end the show. So with me pre-recording this episode with my trip coming up, I will not be doing a bet on the show. If I do end up doing a bet during the divisional round, I will post that on social media for you guys to check out. But at least today I wanted to go over the bet that I won last week. This is a $5 bet for $97 win, and I did hit on this with Bryce Young getting an interception. Trevor Lawrence got at least 2 touchdowns. Parker Washington got at least 47.5. He actually ended up getting over 100 yards in this game. Trevor Lawrence got 3 touchdowns in his game. Christian McCaffrey needed at least 1 touchdown. He ended up getting 2, so that one hit. Stafford, he needed at least 3 touchdowns in the air, which he got. He got exactly 3, so that was good. And then Puka Nacua needed at least 1 touchdown, and he ended up with 2 touchdowns in that game. So that bet hit. $5 bet. I ended up winning $97 on that and some change. So great week of football. And we look ahead to a fun divisional round with the Broncos playing on my birthday. It's going to be awesome. So that'll wrap up today's show. Check out the rest of the year's episode if you're new to the show. And we'll look ahead to the divisional round and go over those matchups. And then we'll look ahead to the conference championships on who will be battling for the Super Bowl. Very exciting stuff coming up in the NFL. And then, of course, I'll update you with any more injuries and head coaching jobs as we go through this coaching carousel into the offseason. So with that, later, everybody. I hope you won all your bets this week. I hope you win the next bets, and we'll look ahead as we come out of the divisional round. Later, everyone.